But I think we do get very good people.
Good day, everybody. My name is Mike Zetkins from the Connect for Climate program. We're coming to you live here from the GEF Assembly in Viet Nam. We're running a series of interviews to really address the global commons and discuss how to really build a more sustainable and environmentally friendly future. Next up, we've got a discussion with Peter Thomson. Peter Thomson is the UN Special Envoy for the Oceans. And Jeff Lean will be taking us through that interview. Jeff has over 50 years of environmental journalism experience and is one of the thinkers on environmental topics. So over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Max. Well, Peter, you're from Fiji. Yes.
Yes, I'm a fifth generation Fiji Islander.
And you grew up near the ocean yourself, or?
Yeah, in Fiji, everywhere. When I was born, my father was the district officer of the northern part of Fiji.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, some 28 years later, I had the same job of district officer of that same area.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was reminded about that recently because I went up there to launch the Year of the Reef with Eric Solheim and the Prime Minister of Fiji. We launched the International Year of the Reef up
in your homeland,
in that northern Fiji area, yeah.
And so, the ocean was part of your growing up. Obviously, it's in your blood.
Yeah, and if you live in the Pacific Islands, you know, there's a little bit of land and a lot of ocean. Yeah.
Well, all our blood is the same level of salt as seawater, I think, doesn't it?
That's right.
Yours perhaps more so than most.
Yeah, well, my first ancestor in Fiji was a pretty salty guy. He was from Arbroath in Scotland. He was a sea captain, and he died in Fiji, so we've been there ever since.
So how do you feel about you must have seen what's been happening to the oceans through a long lifetime. I mean, how does it leave you feeling?
I had 7 or 8 years in New York at the United Nations as Fiji's permanent representative at the United Nations, which led me on to being president of the United Nations General Assembly.
Yeah.
And I have to say that what stuck with me through that was this ocean theme, because if I looked at the Pacific Islands and said, what are the two things that affect us most? One would be climate change, and the other would be ocean change.
And the two interact.
And in climate change, of course, we've got great leaders in the Pacific Islands who've been leading that charge for many years now. In fact, the Prime Minister of Fiji is current president of COP23, but there have been great Pacific Island leaders in the past who've taken that banner forward. So on the ocean side, I as president of the GI, I really pushed that ocean conference in 2017 and have carried on with the work since then. Because I think those two factors, climate and ocean, are the two fundamental things for future generations, not just in the Pacific Islands, but for human species on this planet.
And they interact, I mean, obviously, with sea level rise, acidification.
Very closely. I mean, sea level rise is 40% about expanding H2O because of global warming, but it's also about the melting ice caps, which are also affected by global warming. So that's where it's coming from. Climate change is causing these rising sea levels. They're a fact of life, which we are going to have to concentrate on actually here over the next couple of days. Yes. What is the financial and infrastructure implications of that sea level rise over the next 50 to 100 years?
Which are enormous, because most of the world cities on the coast and an awful lot of road and rail and everything else.
Exactly.
Power stations.
Exactly, yeah. I was with some people recently on the eastern seaboard of the United States who are considering whether to do a 50-year build on their jetty or a 100-year build. It's a substantial jetty, and we're talking about over $50 million worth of build there. Now that's just one jetty. If you think about that whole eastern seaboard, and you think about the trillions of dollars that will have to be spent adjusting ports and foreshores, and then you multiply that around the world, and you see it'll be one of our big preoccupations in the 21st century.
But what about the other ocean issues? I mean, marine plastics, pollution, dead zones.
Yeah, I think the marine plastics one is it's been a great awakener since the Ocean Conference. I think David Attenborough's Blue Planet presentation really helped in that regard. But The good news is that everywhere I go, I see governments and corporations acting on plastic pollution.
Yeah.
I am deeply worried, though, that the silver bullet is not there on plastic pollution. We have to look at all the options that are being put on the table, from recycling to refusing use of single-use plastics and so on. We have to look at all those. Because, as we speak, the petrochemical industry is continuing to invest heavily in plastic production and growth in plastic production.
Double between now and 2030.
Yeah. So as to the others, I'm afraid the news is all bad there as well. Eutrophication levels are rising. That's dead zones, caused mainly by runoff from land, fertilizers, industrial waste, sewage. So there's a lot of work for us to do there to turn that one around. The ocean acidification, again, due to climate change, is a problem for calcium-based life in the ocean. If you look at all the other factors like declining fish stocks, we're not in good shape. Yeah. But the good news is we have a plan to turn it all around, whereas we were sleepwalking into this stuff before. We now have got a realization that we're in a battle, and we've got a battle plan now.
And I've heard you say that you think the negative spiral can be turned around by 2030. That's kind of close.
Yes, it is, but I've studied that in some detail. Of course, it all depends on the success of the Paris Climate Agreement and the degree to which countries stay faithful to that. Yeah. Because so much of the ocean's problems relate to those GHG emissions. But if we stay true to the Paris Climate Agreement, and I do think that humanity sees that as being in its best interest, then I think that all of the 2030 goals can be realized. And bear in mind that the challenge is actually higher than that when it comes to my area of responsibility, which is Sustainable Development Goal 14, which is the ocean goal, which has 10 targets. And of those 10 targets, 4 of them mature in 2020, so that's only 2 years away.
How close are we to them?
Well, I'm really trying to get the lever pressed to the floor on that one. One of them relates to getting rid of harmful fisheries subsidies. That's WTO. Hopefully we can get that done. Another one relates to getting 10% of our ocean waters covered by marine protected areas.
That's been progressing recently.
That's been doing well. We're at about 7% now.
Yes.
So we could get there comfortably by 2020.
But I remember it was only 1% not that long ago.
And then the other two about better management of fish stocks, and I'm going to FAO next month to talk to the ministers of fisheries who get together once every 2 years. So I think we can get there. And then the other one is better management of coastal and marine ecosystems, and we'll be talking a lot about that here over the next 2 days.
And how important is the GEF in making these things happen?
Well, we can do none of this infrastructure work without the funding, of course. And was down in Washington recently talking to World Bank and talking to GEF. You've got the Green Climate Fund, you've got the regional development banks. Everybody's got to have an ocean element now to their programs. And the one that I'm particularly pushing on the financial institutions is this coastal infrastructure work.
Yes.
Floodgates, seawalls, jetties, new ports, to adjust to these changes that are going to occur because of rising sea levels.
And do you get a receptive ear when you go and talk?
I do. I've been in rural development since the early 70s as a district officer in Fiji, and right back then people would say, there's plenty of money, you just don't have the projects. You've got to get your projects properly documented, and then we can give you the money. Well, that's not good enough for me. I mean, we're bureaucrats. Our job, whether we work in the bank or work in government, is to make sure that the money gets to the people and the projects that we all know are there.
Yeah.
I mean, there isn't a developing country in the world that wouldn't like half a dozen new sewage projects to be funded by these international funds. So there's no lack of demand. It's just a failure of getting the pipeline working properly.
And how does that failure occur? I mean, what's to blame for that failure?
Well, I put it on us, the bureaucrats.
Yeah.
You know, I just think we have to do a much better job of simplifying that process.
Yes.
I mean, there are sewage engineers who know how to put together a sewage project.
Yes.
I'm never going to be able to do that. So, you know, can't the World Bank have some standard packages for sewage, let's say?
Well, we thought we could, yes.
Which we can just apply with a whole lot less rigmarole than we currently do.
Yes, yes. Should be dirt cheap, but no.
Well, without good sewage, you know, we will not win the battle on eutrophication and marine ecosystems.
So a lot of these people watching this are going to be much younger than you and I. I mean, what should they do? They're thinking about how to orientate their lives.
Yeah.
How should the oceans feature?
Look, there's no doubt in my mind that individuals are the most important aspect of this whole struggle that we have on climate change and on ocean change. It's individuals, and particularly young individuals, because they're the ones who are going to inherit the real problems that are coming in the future. So individuals have the power of consumer choice.
Yeah.
When you walk into a shop, when you walk into a restaurant, you have your standards which you take in there, and you can impose them, because if the service is not provided to you, you don't pay for it, you don't take it. Right. You go somewhere else. Same thing with governments and politicians. Yeah. If they're not giving you what you need for a secure future, choose somebody else for your government. So an individual has a huge amount of power. And also, you know, I go back to my own family experience. It wasn't until the early 90s that my daughter, who was studying an environmental course at university at the time, came home and reorganized our house, that we really got into recycling. So there was a 17-year-old daughter basically taking control of this issue and saying, you know, Mum and Dad, brother, you're deficient in this, and let's take. So individuals do make the difference. And to anybody that's listening to this who is inclined to do the right thing, go and use your power, is what I would say.
No, I mean, always, very often the children of world leaders, in my journalist experience, have been the strongest allies. It was Mali and Sasha who finally got Obama going on climate change, for example.
Yes,
and it's very often the case.
That's right.
People do things when their children get after them.
Yeah, I'm fond of quoting Nelson Mandela, who said that everything is impossible until it's done.
Yes.
You know, and I think that's where the power of young people really comes into it. You know, just go out and do it. Yeah. Make these changes. You know, do not buy internal combustion engine cars. Yeah. I mean, I haven't bought one since the 1990s. You know, choices like that. If enough people do that, well, it's the end of that industry, isn't it?
Excellent. Thank you, Peter. Very good. Excellent stuff.
Thank you.
Great stuff.
Okay.
Good.